is Eugene. I wanted to talk about three cameras that came out this year, and in my mind, all three are interesting, but for very different reasons. One of them falls into deja vu, are we doing it again type of category. Another one was exciting, but kind of what were you thinking when you were running this prototype by few test users. And the other one was somewhat surprising positive experience that I had with the camera. Now, those are my impressions. Also, my set of application may be different from yours. And please comment if you agree, disagree, or have some other take on this concept. First camera that I want to talk about is the one that I actually do not have here with me, is Sigma BF. My understanding that BF stands for Beautiful Foolishness, and honestly, that's exactly how I would describe this camera. So the reason why I do not have the camera with me, because I feel like I've used this camera, I know this camera, except this camera appeared 11 years ago, and it was known as Leica T. Back in 2014, Leica released APS-C camera that would advertise as a new paradigm in photography. Leica was stepping away from very tactile, very manual controls, more towards what they were describing as a new age, new principle of interacting with a camera, inspired by a cell phone. Those cameras were cut out of single block of aluminum, were available in two colors, brushed aluminum and anodized black. And in that respect, it almost seems like Sigma right now is copying almost verbatim what Leica was advertising back in 2014. Now, in 2014, I was very excited to get this camera. Camera itself was really, really beautiful. When you hold it in your hands, it's weighty, it's very well machined, really work of art. Also, Leica came with new set of lenses. This line they were not the fastest lenses, but at the same time they were very compact and still amazing color and micro contrast. I think as a line, they're still one of my favorite lines of lenses. Even though there are very few available, each one of them is very high quality. So I tried very hard to like this camera. I tried to change my style of photography, figure out how I can map controls, to maybe make it a little bit easier to work with a touchscreen display and with fewer buttons. And ultimately, it was a struggle that I did not win. Luckily, sometime later, Leica decided to do basically complete 180, and they released Leica CL, which I have here with me. This is still one of my favorite cameras. So all of the principles that Leica was advertising, a new way of interacting with photographic equipment, they went back on. They reintroduced back electronic viewfinder. They also reintroduced back mechanical dials. Now they're minimalist. There is one button inside each one of those dials and two dials. And overall, as any other Leica, it's very clean, minimalist style of controls, but it gives you everything you need. This is not a sports camera, but for street photography, where there are only a few options that you could legitimately be choosing between, this was very, very comfortable. I do not know if this camera is cut from a single piece of aluminum, maybe not. It's still extremely well built, and it's really a joy to use. So my expectation is that Sigma BF is going to follow exactly the same adoption, where some people will buy it because it sounds interesting, it's new, it's a beautiful camera. However, very, very few photographers will actually adopt it as their main camera or camera they use somewhat frequently. And I think sooner or later, either Sigma will stop making photographic cameras and focus more on videographers, or we'll have to go back to more conventional controls, more conventional design with either electronic or, unlikely, but possibly optical viewfinder. So that's my impression of BF. The other camera that I was very excited about when I first heard about it is medium format Fuji camera, non-interchangeable lens 100RF. Now, I've been a big fan of Fuji cameras, both interchangeable and fixed focal length. I got first X100 as soon as they released it, and right now I'm using X100V, the 5th generation, and I like just about everything about this camera. It's a very good sensor, very competent lens, controls are great, some of my favorite controls, very intuitive, easy to read. It's a beautiful camera. I like the retro style, it's easy to operate. I have it here with a small rig grip, which makes it very easy to hold definitively. You're never concerned about dropping it, together with thumbs up, which gives you even more secure grip. It's very easy to operate for a long time. I can also operate it one-handed. You can drop your finger to multi-directional control while still holding a camera. Very cool, very convenient, love this line of cameras. I was also very curious to try medium format cameras, so this was very exciting that Fuji decided to go down this direction, and now not only it's a line that I already appreciate, but also medium format, which allows me to test modern medium format. Now, I never owned medium format camera before this one, digital medium format, I should say. I played a little bit with medium format in a pre-digital world, film cameras. So I probably got one of the first uh, GFX 100RFs when they came out in the market. Now this camera looks obviously very similar to the other one that I just showed. Modular optical viewfinder that Fuji decided to drop. But honestly, not a big deal for me. While I like optical viewfinder because it looks cool, practically I almost always shoot it in EVF mode. So as long as it has EVF, that's fine for me. Controls are very familiar, not a lot to get used to. The sensor itself is beautiful. At base ISO or generally low ISO, clearly significant advantage over a full frame if you need it. Much more latitude in post-processing. Images don't degrade nearly as quickly. Resolution is off the charts. I'm not sure I need this much resolution, but it's there if you need it. So overall, pleased with the sensor, like the style of the camera, like how compact it is. It's easy to pack it with you and go for a walk or travel with it. Now, there are some other technical choices that Fuji went with that leave me somewhat puzzled. So I'm not a medium format shooter, so I appreciate the fact that it's possibly very difficult to make lens faster than f4 and still have this compact form factor. That said, to make this camera environmentally sealed, you have to add this attachment, which sticks out quite a bit and makes the whole camera significantly less compact. So I was curious that they were willing to sacrifice faster lens to make the camera more compact, but when it came to attachment to make it environmentally sealed, it seems like they're willing to sacrifice a lot of space for that. Okay, fine. So let's say we have to go with a slower lens. The next decision is probably the most puzzling one in this camera, which is the fact that it does not include in-image stabilization. Now, during one of the interviews with an engineer from Fuji, he mentioned that if they had to include IBIS, which Fuji does have in its other cameras, this would extend the width of the camera by another 3 millimeters, which in my mind is like nothing. I doubt anybody would even notice the difference. Sacrificing IBIS, though, changes usability of this camera a lot. In a good day, obviously, I'm going to step down and shoot a much smaller aperture to get depth of field, especially for landscapes. But when it gets dark, you kind of need either IBIS or a faster lens. Now, I went for a walk in evening in San Francisco, and indeed, the camera is able to perform quite well at fairly high ISO. 6400 still works well enough. And it's okay. At this point, all of the magic is gone, and you do not have the quality of medium format images if you're shooting at such high ISO, but images are still usable. I also went for a walk in a redwood forest. Redwoods are pretty tall, so they cut light quite a bit. And I also had to shoot at 6400. And with the foliage, where you're really looking for this fine color that differentiates kind of different types of grass, etc. At 6400, it was very difficult to get high quality image. At this point, I would opt out for anything that would allow me to shoot at lower ISO. So very, very questionable decision with respect to IBIS. I really hope that they will change this in the next generation. Unfortunately, that's probably going to be some time from now. But this is not the last thing that left me puzzled. So let's go through kind of the main features that I'm sure if you saw any reviews have been discussed. One, there is this dial right here, which changes aspect ratio. Now, I appreciate the fact that you may want to have different aspect ratios when you shoot different images, but you could do something interesting with this. For instance, Panasonic LX100 had a circular sensor, and as a result, when you were changing aspect ratio, yes, it would change pixel count, but it wouldn't literally be cropping the same 4:3 sensor. If they did something like this, I would actually think this would be extremely cool feature. But as it is just cropping, I'm not sure I would want to have a dedicated dial for so many different settings. I can crop after fact. I'm used to cropping if I need to after fact. I do not know that this buys me so much flexibility to justify this dedicated dial. Even more peculiar is this dedicated control for digital zoom. So this lens is 35mm, it's 28mm equivalent in terms of full frame. And given high resolution, Fuji thought it's going to be interesting to give people option to zoom to different focal length, which is bizarre to me because, again, I'm buying this camera for the beautiful medium format sensor. If I have to crop it to full format, APS-C, and in the further setting, micro four thirds, I may as well just get micro four thirds camera and use it with an optical zoom lens. At least I get uniform pixel count, uniform quality, and that actually sits much better with me. So I'm surprised that they decided to include dedicated dial for this, not a button, but dial. Also, this dial is actually very easy to knock accidentally, which happened to me once. I was shooting outside and I accidentally hit it with my finger, didn't even notice it. So I shot few frames in full frame, which impacted my composition. Now, when you look at the RAW, you still have the full image, full sensor area available in the RAW, but at the time when I was composing them, I thought I have much tighter frame to work with. So risk of accidentally bumping it and overall kind of limited utility of this dial left me a little bit puzzled. Now, another thing which at this point probably distant second tier of concerns, a lot of people complimented this camera that's actually easier to hold for people with large hands. Now, I have pretty large hands, and which is the reason why I like having thumb rest and this additional grip, and I'm used to the fact that my hand does not fully sit on a grip, so I have my pinky under the camera. That gives me a very solid way and there is no chance for camera to slide down. The extra size of the grip for GFX really buys me nothing in terms of quality of how I'm holding it. I still put my pinky under it, just intuitively, force of habit. At the same time, this camera is significantly more difficult to operate one-handed because you have to drop all the way here to this multi-directional dial. And because of the aspect ratio dial that we have right here, I really doubt that thumbs up is going to go and cover it. So probably I'm going to give up some of the usability of the camera because of this large grip, really not gaining too much. So for some people, they found that actually it would be much more convenient. For me, honestly, it's less convenient. So overall, what do I think about the camera? I was mentally keeping track, trying to figure out how many instances were there where I really appreciated more latitude and post-processing that I get from a medium format sensor. How many instances were there where I would like to have something that gave me stabilization and more flexibility, even at the cost of color depth and dynamic range? And how many instances were there where it didn't really matter? The resulting image would look the same if I shot full frame or if I shot medium format. And in about 60% of the cases, it didn't matter. Images would look indistinguishable if you look at them online, whether it's medium format or full frame. Probably there were 10% where I appreciated extra dynamic range, extra ability to post-process, and for image still to retain its look. And there were about 30% where I would opt out for any other camera that has image stabilization and faster lanes. So this is why this IBIS thing bothers me the most out of all of the decisions that Fuji went with. But overall, it's a beautiful camera. I'm definitely going to use it a lot for landscapes. It gives you amazing dynamic range, beautiful color. It gives you more resolution, frankly, than I need. I don't think resolution is what was holding me back all this time. But dynamic range is kind of cool, and you kind of have to play with those images to appreciate the latitude that it gives you. And finally, the last camera I wanted to talk about is the one by OM Systems, OM-3, that got released recently. And I feel like I have to tell a little bit of the story, even though if you want to know more details, I encourage you to go online and read about this. OM System is Olympus imaging division that was forced to split from the main company. The reason why they had to split has nothing to do with how imaging was performing, but it had to do with the fact that Olympus made some questionable financial decisions and then tried to cover them up illegally through some fraudulent investments, and when the whole story became public, they went under high scrutiny, and basically the company had to save some assets, and it broke up into multiple pieces. One of them is OM Systems. For several years, OM was only producing somewhat rebranded versions of Olympus cameras with very minor modifications. They would switch rubberization on the wheel, add a little bit more memory, but basically it was the same cameras that Olympus was producing under new management. Now, OM-3 is the first original camera produced by OM Systems. And I was really curious to give it a try. Well, number one, I want to see if Olympus still lives in the form of OM Systems, or if this is one of the last cameras that we'll see from Olympus or its descendant. Another thing that I appreciate about Micro Four Thirds system is how compact the lenses are for the system. The camera itself could be comparable to APS-C, maybe slightly smaller, but lenses is where you save most of the space. So for instance, this case is able to fit both the main camera and its normal zoom lens, as well as this is 40 to 150, so it's 300mm equivalent for full frame. You also can fit 20mm f1.4, so 40mm equivalent for low light, for portraits, and 9mm, 18mm equivalent, which I use when I need to shoot inside buildings and tight spaces, caves, etc. So all of this fits into this super compact light package that you can take with you. You don't need to think hard about which equipment you take. Are you planning to take a lot of pictures, not take a lot of pictures? When you go on a hike where weight really matters, this is the great system to have with you, because it basically takes very little effort to carry it, and it doesn't strain you like bringing equivalent number of lenses for full frame. So for that reason, I got this OM-3 camera. The camera itself, I like the retro styling with a lot of textile controls. In terms of specs, this camera is a slightly down-spec version of the flagship OM-1, but also in much more compact, lighter body. Now, one feature that Olympus was heavily advertising, and honestly I discounted it as a gimmick, is computational photography. Computational photography is the ability to apply certain filters while you're taking image, as opposed to doing it in post-processing. Okay, so what were my impressions? Honestly, I was really impressed with this camera after using it for some time. I took it on a trip with me, I took it as my camera when I went on hikes. I shot everything from portraits to low light photography to some sports with this camera, and this camera is really able to keep up. It has amazing stabilization. Sometimes I would shoot in a situation where I could barely resolve anything with my eye, and I was still able to produce usable images while shooting offhand. Even computational photography, which initially I dismissed, I realized that's actually a very useful feature. Now, for those of you who are not sure how it works, it actually works slightly differently than applying the same filters in post-processing in Lightroom. Those filters are applied to raw output from the sensor, so they degrade the quality of the image less than you would in post-processing. And this is great because the heavy processing can definitely take a toll on the quality of your image, especially if you're dealing with smaller sensors. They don't have quite as big depth of color as full frame or medium format sensors. So I went from being a disbeliever to really heavily using computational photography. A lot of times when I do landscapes, I apply graduated neutral density in post-processing to make sure my foreground is properly exposed compared to the sky. So now I can do it when I'm taking the image and adjust exposure accordingly, and it does not degrade image nearly as much. And this is great. And I started using it for landscapes. Then I applied it in several cases when I was doing street photography to make sure, again, I have exposure of some parts of the image matching exposure of the other part of the image. I got so used to it that when I tried using the medium format camera by Fuji, I felt like I was really lacking the same computational photography feature, which allowed me to see how this image is going to look after I'm done post-processing it. Now, the camera itself is environmentally sealed. All of the lenses, the ones that I showed and the one that I have on it right now, they're all environmentally sealed, so you do not need to worry about shooting in the rain, moisture getting to the camera. The frame rate and buffer are pretty good. They may be a notch behind the top sports cameras of today, but several years ago this would absolutely be state of the art for sports photography. So overall, I thought that's a very, very impressive camera, and it's impressive how much they're able to pull from this fairly small sensor. Overall, big fan, very impressed. I want to make sure that's not the last camera we'll see from OM system. Unfortunately, it's very difficult for me to judge non-trivial events in separating this division from Olympus, but I definitely will get a lot of usage from this camera.